Well, let's talk about Amazon, because Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, who's bought the Washington Post with $250 million of his personal fortune in August 2013, has led the once proud newspaper into the digital future through developing the digital content management system called Arc Publishing. Now, today his efforts appear to be paying off, as the Post has recently announced the 11th outside news operation beside 8 university papers in the US who pay for its in-house CMS suite, saying, quote, "I'm a huge fan of leaning into the future. I don't know anything about the newspaper business," said Bezos, the creator of Amazon, who purchased the struggling newspaper last year at a media conference. "But I did know something," quote, "about the internet that, combined with the financial runway that I can provide, is the reason why I bought the Post." Talk about this a little bit more, Scott. There's kind of two sides to this in a sense, and obviously we'll get into the CMS industry, what it means for that as well.
Sure, yeah, that being the second. The first side being just the interesting notion that you can take this 137-year-old organization that was really struggling, as frankly all their competitors are as well, in a newspaper industry, trying to figure out how they can be relevant in this digital world and working out various business models for that. So I think the really interesting thing is, here's a guy who admittedly doesn't know anything about this business, and I think that's actually his advantage here, is coming in and saying, you know, I don't know anything about this, so all questions are on the table. I make no assumptions walking in. Let me go use data, insight, and the power of understanding what the audience is looking for by reading their cues that they're going to give us. So in fact, what he's done is thrown more cash into this. Basically, he gave, I think, all Amazon's Prime subscribers 6 months of free access, basically because he wants to build it up, certainly to beat the New York Times, but also just to get a really good understanding of what is a new customer looking for from the paper. So I think the turnaround of the Post is a really interesting thing to watch. It's not about the content space, though. Yeah, I think that's a different side.
Well, let's talk about the other side, the content management industry. What does this actually mean? I just read off some of those numbers as far as, you know, universities and the number of other publications. Talk about what this really means for the CMS industry itself.
You know, so many times when we work with customers, they come to us and say, well, our needs are so unique because, and I listen to them, and while there are certainly some idiosyncrasies of some businesses, for the most part, everyone has the same challenges. The publishing industry, however, does have very specific nuances that typically aren't actually very well met by the CMSs of today. They have some real challenges with, I mean, think about distribution and the notion of the business models that they have with ads versus paywalls and all of that, the varying revenue streams they have, versioning, just all of that. They have some real challenges that it looks like his creation of this Arc Publishing custom platform and the fact that they've been able to kind of really get some good traction both with their own journalists, but also with these, as you mentioned, 11 other newspapers, I think, and 8 universities, is a really interesting thing, and it'll be interesting to see where he takes that. Certainly he can afford to support that for a while it gets its legs under it, to see if it can push it out into the market. We might be evaluating Arc Publishing pretty soon as a platform. I was going to say, it probably
is going to be evaluated very soon. The last question, how much do you love him literally coming out and saying, I know nothing about the newspaper industry, but I know a little bit about the internet?
It's pretty amazing, considering that he dominates the internet.
Exactly. Absolutely love that.